Hi, folks. My name's Stephen Kane, aka Legal Amigo. I'm a Stanford trained attorney based in California and also a legal tech startup founder. I've been working for the last 10 plus years to make the legal system more fair for everyone, especially people without an attorney. I'm not going to lie to you, it's been a total uphill battle. It's been really hard, and there's still a lot of work to do. But I want you to know I haven't given up. Neither should you. And I'm making these videos to help people help themselves navigate the legal system. All right, so let's dive into today's video. It's all about chargeback disputes. We're going to cover chargeback disputes from the perspective of a consumer and also from the perspective of a merchant. They can be a consumer's best friend. They can be a merchant's worst nightmare. And I'm going to offer tips to both because there's things both parties can do to make their lives a little bit better. All right. Well, the first question is, what is a chargeback dispute? Well, in the late 60s and early 70s, as credit cards caught on, there was federal law put into place for there to be a private dispute resolution mechanism for whenever people used credit cards or went through their banks to make payments. So instead of going to court, you can use this private mechanism which goes through the credit card companies and the banks. All right. There are two basic areas of chargebacks, two basic reasons that a consumer might make a chargeback. One is that there's some sort of fraud. Okay. So your credit card was stolen, or maybe there is a charge that you see that you didn't authorize. You don't recognize it and you didn't authorize the merchant to make it. Or maybe the merchant charged more than you agreed for them to charge. You thought it was going to be $200 and it was $500. That falls into the fraud category and valid reasons for a chargeback. The other category would be that you didn't get what you bargained for. You didn't get what you expected. You didn't get what was advertised, whether it's a good or a service, whether it's something you ordered online and you receive, or it's something you buy in person at a brick and mortar store, or some sort of service you receive, like a car wash or even accounting, something like that. It could be, for example, that you rented a vacation house, and the vacation house was supposed to be 5 bedrooms for $500 a night for 3 nights, and you paid $1,500, but you get to the vacation house and it's 1 bedroom and a lot smaller than advertised. That would be a very good reason for a chargeback. And you could explain all of that when you make the chargeback. All right. How do you initiate a chargeback? These days, it's real straightforward. You do it online if you log into your credit card company's website or your bank's website, or you do it in an app. You could probably do it if you call customer service. They might direct you to do it online, but you can do it in any of those ways, real simply. What they're going to ask for is they're going to ask for a statement about what happened. You're going to pick from a list of, what type of chargeback it is, right? Was it fraud? And every credit card company and bank is going to be different, but, was it fraud? There's some other reason? Was there damage? But you're basically going to tell them what happened in simple terms, and then you're going to present evidence about what happened. And that's the key. The two keys really in all of this, whether you're the consumer or the merchant, are number one, the evidence you have and the evidence you present. And then number two, what are the rules? When it comes to the evidence, if you're going to think like a lawyer, you're going to make certain points about your case, right? You're going to say XYZ happened, 1, 2, 3 happened. You're going to say, I saw this vacation rental for a 5 bedroom for $1,500 for 3 nights. All right, that's point 1. I went and it was only a 1 bedroom instead of a 5 bedroom. That's point 2. Maybe point 3 is I made this chargeback in time because there's a deadline for chargebacks, which we'll talk about. Well, you need evidence to back all of that up. So point number 1, it said it was 5 bedrooms. Well, here's a screenshot of the ad I saw when I rented it. Here's an email saying I was going to get a 5 bedroom house. Just real basic, right? But be thorough. That's the first point you're making. That's the evidence of the point. Screenshots of that email, screenshots of the ad. Okay, fine. The second point was I went there and it was a 1 bedroom. Well, if you're ever in a situation where you think you're going to have to take legal action, make sure you take photos and video. So to prove my second point, I have photos of this one bedroom. This photo shows the address. Look how small the place is. This video shows the address and all the bedrooms. So that's evidence for point 2. Point number 3, I was supposed to make this chargeback within 120 days of when I spent the money. You can see when I was charged, and here you can see that I'm making this claim within 120 days. It also shows, I think, gives you some credibility because you know some of the rules of their process, right? And think about it, the person on the other end is looking through hundreds or thousands of these, right? Tons of them a day. So when they see somebody's organized, they see clear evidence, and they see you're paying attention, then I think that's going to help them feel more comfortable about siding with you. That's going to give you some credibility. All right, so evidence, right? That's one of the keys in chargebacks. Whatever side you're on. So if you're a merchant, reverse it. Show proof that you advertised a 1-bedroom. Show proof that, yeah, this is a 1-bedroom as advertised. Or show proof that they showed up at a 5-bedroom. And then show proof that you responded in time. Merchants have, different deadlines. Okay. The second area, what are the rules? So merchants will have, or like e-commerce websites will have terms of service. Amazon, eBay, they'll have terms of service. Small businesses might have it too. If you go through Shopify, there'll be like rules, terms of service. You got to pay attention to that. So like if you receive something that was defective, damaged, not as expected, and they have a rule in their terms of service that you've got to return that item within 30 days, that's something you have to point out when you're making the chargeback dispute claim, right? That, hey, here were the rules. I was supposed to return it within 30 days, and I did return it within 30 days. Or if you're the merchant, vice versa. The rule is they have to return it within 30 days, and they did not. And here's the evidence of it, but here's the rule from the terms of service. Same thing would be if there's like a contract, like you hire an accountant or some freelancer, a graphics designer. They don't deliver on time. They don't deliver what you expected. You can point to the contract. Here's what they were supposed to deliver. They didn't do it, et cetera, et cetera. So those are the two things, evidence and what are the rules based on terms of service or contract. That's what you have to be thinking through if you're thinking like a lawyer and you're arguing your case on the chargeback. On that point, who decides these cases? Well, it's your own, if you're the consumer, it's your own credit card company or your own bank. That reminds me of this legal joke, okay? There's this legal joke that says, young lawyers, when they're just starting out, they ask, what's the law? They take a new case. Well, what's the law on this? Let me research the law. As lawyers go further along, they start to get a little bit more practical. They have more real world experience, and they say, what are the facts of this case? What actually happened? What's the story I can tell? How can I persuade people about this story? Really, you got to look at the interplay between the law and the facts. But anyway, as they go along, they pay more attention to the facts than even the law. What's the story? Well, the most senior, experienced, wise attorneys pay attention to who's the judge. Who's the judge making the decision? What are their biases? What are their interests? What are they about? There's all kinds of legal analytics software out there showing people how judges make decisions, predicting how they might decide on your case because they decided this way on similar cases, and look them up and who they are and all that stuff. It matters. So it matters that the person making this decision is the person at the consumer's credit card company or bank. Now, they might also be the bank or credit card company for the merchant. I'm just saying it's kind of interesting. And the numbers show that consumers win these cases 80% of the time. The numbers also show that merchants only contest, they only fight back on these about 60% of the time. Now, in terms of merchants not fighting back, maybe they don't have time, maybe they get a bunch of these, maybe they acknowledge that there was fraud of some sort, maybe they realize there was a mistake, maybe they realize that the consumer was right and they figure it doesn't make sense to spend time on it. But in terms of the 80% of the time that the consumers win and the merchant loses, that's a little trickier. Could it be because consumers only do this when when they really have a good case. They only do this when they're fed up, and maybe they are really judicious about deciding when to do it. Or could it be that there's some bias? I don't know. You decide. Tell me what you think in the comments. But the judge is your credit card company and your bank. Kind of interesting. A little tough for the merchants. Now, as far as merchants go, there's things you can do, I think, to mitigate all of this. First of all, there are tools to detect fraud. You should research that if you haven't yet, especially if you have a lot of volume. And so, for example, there's this company, and I don't know the name of it, but if somebody signs up with a certain email address and that email address was registered like that day, which is something fraudsters do, right? It's kind of like a burner phone. They'll make a new email. Then that'll be flagged. You'll know that that email was registered that day. That's an example of a tool you can use. There's insurance around fraud, right? There's insurance around like package delivery. There's all sorts of services. So look into like fraud detection, services that will flag people who might be committing fraud that you can integrate into the way in which you accept credit card and bank payments, right? Look into that. It's unfortunate, but merchants will lose money both on the transaction that they lose for the fraud, and they'll bear the brunt of it, but also, of course, if they lose the chargeback. When a chargeback's first initiated, the money goes from the merchant to the consumer, so it could cause cash flow issues too. It's just something merchants have to like bake into their business model. Look for solutions, but also expect there's going to be a certain amount of chargebacks, whether it's fraud or some other reason. And you have to be prepared for it. And you have to account for that in your cash flow and et cetera, right? Now, if you're a merchant and you're getting 1% of chargebacks, that's where you have to start to be concerned. If you're getting less than 1%, then that's okay. You're doing better than the benchmark. Now, you might actually even lose access to your credit card processing provider if you keep getting chargebacks at more than a 1% rate. Because then they'll figure that you either are attracting fraudsters for some reason, or that you are not doing a great job of delivering goods and services to your customers, or that you don't have the right policies in place. That's the other thing, is like making your policies very clear, being very transparent with customers. For example, you go into a brick and mortar store and it says no returns, or 30 days return must be in original packaging. Do that whether it's online or brick and mortar, but be very clear about all of your policies so that then consumers maybe are less likely to be surprised if you say, hey, you didn't return things in time, and maybe more likely to work something out with you, right? Because they know they didn't follow the rule, because they remember that they saw that sign, or they saw it when they checked out online, that there was that rule. So it's all about protecting yourselves in those ways. Developing fair policies too, right? That people don't get ticked off about, right? So if you're like, you only get 1 day to return something and you have to bring it in person across town, that's not fair. But clear policies, fair policies about when you give refunds, what the timeline is to return, what condition it has to be in, but also being responsive to customer inquiries, having a good customer support department that communicates with them so that maybe you could work something out before the chargeback so that you don't get dinged and you don't hit above 1%, so you're not at risk for losing your processing provider, so that you don't lose money. Sometimes you have to pay fees for these chargebacks. So, being responsive, work something out. An example would be a consumer's pissed, they got tattered jeans and they want to return it, and you say, hey, let me give you store credit, sorry about that, come on back. That's kind of like a win-win for everybody. But also with the merchants, keep good evidence. Keep good evidence when a consumer purchases something. Show evidence of your rules again, right? Again, it all comes back to evidence and what the rules are. By the way, I mentioned deadlines before. Consumers usually have 60 to 120 days to initiate a chargeback dispute. It varies a little bit by credit card company and bank. Make sure you do that, because if it's day 121 and the rule's 120, you're out of luck. That's it. You can't do it. Merchants have a lot less time to respond to chargeback disputes. Usually it's something like 20 to 30 days, and it's different for every bank and credit card company. So you really got to look into that. All right, I think those are the basics of chargebacks. If you have any questions, put them in the comments below. By the way, if you're a consumer or a merchant and you lose a chargeback, you can still go to court. If it's a high enough dollar amount, you can go to real court. If it's, I shouldn't say real court, but court for larger disputes. If it's a small dollar amount, you can go through small claims court. That's another option. And then even before that, after the chargeback process, there's a whole arbitration process, which is this other private dispute resolution process that you can do that's managed through the credit card companies and banks, and they could tell you about. So there's a few different things you could do. It's not just the chargeback dispute. There's arbitration and there's court. And with court, you could hire an attorney and go to court, or go yourself, actually pro se. That's what you call it if you don't have an attorney and you file in court. Have fun learning. Maybe you love Matlock. Maybe you love Law and Order. Maybe you love Boston Legal. You want to be your own lawyer. You can go to court and try your hand at it, or small claims court. So just to give you a sense of things. All right. So yeah, I think you can see this is both a consumer's best friend and a merchant's worst nightmare. But hopefully consumers, you're nice and kind and use this judiciously. Especially with like small businesses, especially like mom and pop businesses. And then hopefully businesses, you're prepared and you have good rules and evidence and you put some precautions in place. Thanks, folks. Great to be with you. Take care.